Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Egon von Greyerz of goldswitzerland.com. Egon, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Well, nice to be here again, Max. Just before Christmas, just before the Fed.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about the Fed in a second here. I want to ask you something. You know, people buy gold in times of stress and in uncertainty. Yeah. Now, let's just go down a list of stuff that would precipitate what would be a reason to buy gold. There's an energy crash. This company, energy's crashing all over the world. Oil is down. Gas is at a new low. Commodity prices are collapsing. 27 stock markets are now in correction. Several are down 20 or 30% or more. Economic collapses everywhere. Global trade has been collapsing. Europe is trying to absorb millions of refugees. Terrorism is on the rise. Junk bond interest is skyrocketing. Retailers are in decline. Auto loans and student loans are ready to collapse. The U.S. manufacturing sector is in recession. Hedge funds are tanking. The U.S. stock market now is only basically 10 stocks. Corporate sales are collapsing. Why isn't gold going higher?
So what does that tell us? Yeah, that's a good question. Well, why isn't gold going higher? Well, maybe it is. Maybe it's just the last one in this long line. You know, there is only so long that they can actually manipulate the price of gold. You know, some of these bigger markets, they're so big that just the weight of them make them fall. Now, you take the bond market, which is junk bonds, which are collapsing, and funds are now closing, shutting down redemptions. And all of these things, the powers that be cannot manipulate the real markets. Gold market is sadly not a real market. It's still a manipulated market because, as you know, the paper market is many, many times, up to 300 times bigger than the physical market.
Let's talk about paper for a second because, as you mentioned there briefly, we're on the eve of a possible rate hike this week. This is the big story this week, possible rate hike. This, of course, affects the kind of the nemesis of gold, if you will, the U.S. dollar and everything associated with the U.S. dollar. So what's your feeling about rates this week, about a possible quarter-point rise in rates? Will this have an impact? What does it mean? What are your thoughts?
Well, this could be a typical buy the rumor, sell the fact event. I think that the Fed is wishing something will happen between today and the 16th when the decision comes out. Because as you just outlined, all the economic factors, not only in the U.S., you're talking about retail sales, manufacturing, funds collapsing, the debt levels, and then worldwide, we know it all emerging markets, debt in Far East, Japan, China, Europe, everywhere. The world cannot afford a rate increase, and the Fed knows that. So that's why they are in a conundrum today, because they have said that they are going to increase rates, and for face-saving reasons, they need to do it. That's why I'm sure they would love to see an event happening between today and the end of this week, or Thursday, when they are supposed to announce it, that will stop them from raising rates. You know they're basing it on, well, they're basing it on nothing, because they haven't got a policy, the Fed. They are looking at economic facts and economic data. But when the data is staring them in the face, and we know, for example, from 2007-8, when we had the subprime crisis, right in the midst of that, they still didn't see the crisis. And it's the same today. They can't see it, so therefore they haven't got a policy. They think that unemployment is better, but at the same time they know that the 5% is nonsense, that the real unemployment is near over 20%, and they know also that all the new jobs are either service jobs or jobs for over 55-year-olds, real people in real jobs, i.e. manufacturing, and people who actually produce something. They're losing their jobs all the time.
So it's purely cosmetic and has no basis in economics.
No basis whatsoever. Plus, the world will actually, with a rate increase, you know, it'll be a problem for the dollar, therefore it'll be a problem for debt, it'll be a problem for the emerging markets. So therefore, if they raised it, they would have to come down so quickly that you wouldn't even see the rate increase.
Okay, now the European Central Bank, they've cut rates more into negative territories, even since the last time we spoke. So this is amazing to me because it is banks basically confiscating people's money right out of their bank account with so-called negative interest rates. They call it a policy, but isn't it just wealth confiscation? And again, doesn't that boost the case for gold? Because if you have gold in a vault outside of the banking system, it's not going to be confiscated from the government in the same way that a negative interest rate is. How can they keep going negative like this?
Well, we know why. Because they are trying to create inflation, because they know that without inflation, the European economy will not survive.
How do you create inflation? By destroying money?
No, you don't. But they don't know better. They have no other tools. They've tried everything. They've printed money. They'll print more money. Now they're in the negative interest rate territory, which has never really been tested properly before. But you know what the ECB is doing is another also reason why the Fed can't go the other way. We are talking about one world economy. You can't have one going into more negative and another one increasing rates.
Good point there.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a global banking system, and central banks are all connected.
Yeah.
And if you have the U.S. is saying they're going to go up a quarter point while Europe's going more into negative, that doesn't work, does it?
Doesn't work. It's ridiculous.
Okay, now, last time also some news here that Italy has rescued 4 banks. Shareholders and bondholders were wiped out, and people are committing suicide. Do you see more of this going forward in 2016 when these depositor bail-ins, in other words, again, another way for banks to confiscate wealth through a so-called bail-in, is that a trend we'll see more of in 2016?
We will have bail-ins all over the world. You know, you could say that depositors will be extremely upset because their money in the bank isn't safe. But, you know, there's no reason why should everyone who actually takes a risk, and you take a massive risk when you lend money to a bank. I mean, I would want security if I lent money to a bank. You know, they want security from you all the time. But, you know, every single bank is unsafe in my world.
Right, when you deposit money in a bank,
Exactly.
you're lending the money to the bank.
And you should take security from the bank because they can't repay it. If
But
everybody...
instead, they're charging you for that service.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
All right, now, you're in Switzerland. The Bank of International Settlements is in Switzerland. I mean, the perception is that it's the central bank of central banks. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So they just issued a report warning that the world is on the verge of yet another debt collapse. There's 200 trillion in debt around the world.
Yeah.
There's only so much debt you can create before you get debt saturation or peak debt.
Yeah.
The Bank of International Settlements is suggesting that we've reached this point. Do you agree?
Absolutely, we are. I've been saying this for quite a few years, and you know, it's absolutely amazing that no one yet has detected that the emperor is totally naked. The BIS knows it. Many of us know it. You know it. And it will happen. I mean, the system is bankrupt. There's no chance the system can take higher interest rate. Absolutely no chance. And the BIS, the funny thing is that the board of the BIS is really all the central bankers. So when they go there, they have a totally different discussion to when they go back, because when they go back to their home country, it's politics. They can't tell the truth ever.
Well, what you're describing here is amazingly corrupt. So the Bank of International Settlements, they say one thing, then they go back to their home countries, they say another thing, and then different countries say even a different thing.
Absolutely, because that's as soon as a central banker goes back to his home country, he puts his political hat on, and then he can't tell the truth anymore.
All right, let's talk about, again, in Switzerland, where you all hang out there. I don't know if that's the correct term to say that you hang out in Switzerland, but nevertheless, they have just started in January 1 of 2016. All free ports will have to abide by new legislation regarding the contents of these infamous warehouses. So you read this story, right? So
Sure,
what are these free ports, and what does this mean?
Sure. I think it's one person who spread this rumor, and that's Martin Armstrong, and he hasn't got the facts right. So there's always a danger when you spread rumors on the internet. Everybody picks it up and it becomes a big thing. There has been a rule for a very long time in Switzerland that the bonded warehouses, this is the part of the warehouses normally at airports where it's duty-free or outside the country itself. You can export or import things through there without paying VAT. But therefore, and it's been in effect for many years, bonded warehouses are supposed to keep a register of all the clients and all the goods. That's nothing new. And of course they have to. They always have a register. Now, from 1st of January, that has to be an electronic register. That's the only difference. And that register is there so that customs can expect it if they think that something isn't right within the vault. One of the big vaulters told us that inspection in the last 5 years has happened twice. So they're not reporting, they're not sending reports in, they're just keeping a register, which they would do anyway. And of course, VAT inspectors can always inspect. So that, this is to me a bit of a red herring and nonsense. It is not being reported to governments around the world, not being even reported to the Swiss governments, but only available for inspection by the Swiss customs people.
Okay, so you cleared that up for us then. So these warehouses they already are subject to essentially to being inspected, and there is a registration process. Is there any abuse? Why? They're just doing this for convenience to get electronically recorded, or is there something going on here? Because Switzerland, of course, has given up many of their customers around the world in previously thought to be private banking situations.
Yeah,
HSBC, that whole scandal. Yeah. So they've really opened up their books to the U.S. regulators. So it looks like they're opening this up now. So Switzerland's reputation as a safe haven has taken a huge beating recently. So this is not part of that trend.
No, it's not part of it at all, because that register has been there for a long time. You know that VAT authorities always need to know actually what is, especially in a bonded warehouse, what there is there and what is subject to VAT. But they don't even, the reports are not even sent to them. They are there to inspect if there is some kind of problem they want to look at.
So the Swiss National Bank, keeping on the Swiss National Bank for a second, they were defending the currency stability, I guess you could say, versus the euro by buying lots of euros. How did that program work out? Is it still ongoing? And what's your thought of the Swiss franc going forward?
It's a disaster, of course. We had this Swiss gold initiative a year ago when we tried to change, make gold more important as part of the Swiss National Bank's policy. It was defeated. At the time, I said the peg will never hold. 6 weeks later, I was attacked by everybody, by the central bankers, by everybody saying that you're conspiracy theorists. 6 weeks later, they let the peg go. In spite of that, their balance sheet is increasing. They're buying more euros, and they're almost now up to 100% of the Swiss GDP, their balance sheet, which is bigger than any Western country in the world central bank. So they still have to continue to defend, i.e. lower the value of the Swiss francs, because they think that they can't survive with a strong Swiss franc. In spite of the fact that for centuries, or certainly for decades, the Swiss franc has strengthened against every currency in the world, and Switzerland has been the strongest economy of any in the world. So, these are now hedge fund managers who are running central banks, and they actually don't know what they're doing, in my view.
All right, we've got to cut it up there. Egon, thanks for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you. Pleasure.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Egon von Greyerz of goldswitzerland.com. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.